Hey everybody, it's me, Kamau Bell. Welcome to episode 344 of Who's With Me, the podcast. Brought to you by my good friends at Rabbit Grin Productions, where I'm at right now, and it's on the Pushkin Network. Thank you for having me. Last week, the episode was Ted Danson, where Ted Danson very thoroughly, by my judgment, sensitively, vulnerably, and what I would say is honestly apologized for his blackface and inward-laden, I didn't hear it, performance at the 1993 Friars Club roast of Whoopi Goldberg. So we taped that, as I said last week, before the Kevin Hart roast. So by the time it was airing, I had no idea the Kevin Hart roast would still be in the news, but I thought it might make some headlines. And boy, did it ever get some headlines. It was of the three podcasts we've done, it's the most talked about. It's the first one TMZ has talked about. I've been in touch with Ted since the podcast aired. He's very happy with it. Apparently his daughter liked it. Apparently his publicist, who's the same publicist he had back then, also liked it. So mission accomplished, everybody. Of course, some people didn't like it, which people don't like things. But I am proud to say I got my first heat from Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly did not like seeing two adult men sensitively and lovingly talk about a difficult issue. And she called me out. Actually, I don't know if she called me out because she called me Kamau Bell. She said, let me tell you about Kamau Bell. So I responded to Megyn in a video that I made at the Newark airport when I was flying back from the Tribeca Film Festival. People seem to enjoy it. Maybe me and Megyn go back and forth. She will never be a guest on the podcast. Megyn, if you're watching this or you people are, you'll never be a guest. It's never going to come to that. But thanks for giving me something to do while I was waiting for my flight back home from the Newark airport, Megyn Kelly, or as I call you, Megyn. Happy Pride Month, everybody. It is June. Last week it was Pride Month, but I got distracted by all the Ted Danson of it all. But I do want to make sure it's clear. Happy Pride Month. Last year in Oakland, I was actually one of the grand marshals of the Oakland Pride Parade. So I'm all down with the LGBTQ+. I've talked a lot about how moving to the Bay Area really connected me to those communities and how that really sort of brought me to the understanding that I have today. So shout out to Oakland. Shout out to Martha Reinberg. Shout out to Oakland Pride. You know, it really, moving to the Bay Area really expanded my mind about all the letters of the LGBTQ+. Today, our guest is Kristen Kish. She is the host of Top Chef. The season finale just aired, so check that out. After you check this out, Kristen Kish is amazing. We'll talk more about her in a little bit. I do want to talk a little bit more because it's not just Pride Month. I think it's also a good time to talk about those letters, and specifically the letter T for trans and transgender and the transgender community. A few years ago, America had a moment where it seemed like we were opening up our cultural imagination and our cultural intelligence towards trans people. It was around the time that Caitlyn Jenner announced herself as a transgender woman, and she was on the cover of magazines, and ESPN was giving her awards. And it was a moment where it felt like after we'd had a weird bathroom thing where we were battling over the bathrooms and who could go and who couldn't go, America was like, we understand that transgender people are people too. They've lived throughout history. They've always been here. This is not new. It's just maybe new to you. And a lot of us came to a new understanding of the transgender identity, just like is a part of humanity, just like the heterosexual identity and the heteronormative identity. It's just another way humanity expresses itself, or themself, or herself, or hisself. But then that stopped. And there's been pushback against trans people, much of it weaponized by comedians of my age, middle-aged male comedians. So I feel like I have to speak out on the other side of that as often as possible. And I just want to be clear. Like, I am 100% down with trans folks. I've done an episode of United Shades about the trans community in Dallas, Texas, when I had that show. In a couple episodes, we'll have Nava Mao, the incredible actress from Baby Reindeer, and we talk about her struggle as a transgender actress in Hollywood and how she has to create her own projects. But I've gotten some pushback from people who are questioning why I would have my podcast with Pushkin, because Malcom Gladwell has different feelings about the trans community. Specifically around trans people playing sports, specifically around trans women playing sports. And people are like, why would you do that, Kamau? Why would you be there? And here's the thing. First of all, I want to be clear. Throughout my career, I've worked with people who thought differently than me. Hell, I was at CNN. I was surrounded by people who thought differently than me. And the thing that I always have to ask myself is, do I feel comfortable being my full self in these places where people think differently than me? And right here on Who's With Me, the podcast, I feel comfortable being my full self and saying I disagree with Malcom Gladwell on what he thinks about trans people in sports, as I agree with anybody who thinks trans people shouldn't play sports. I actually talk about this on stage a lot. Let trans people play sports. Let trans kids play sports. And you know why it's okay? Because sports is fake. Sports is fake. So if people want to play a game, it's literally a game. It doesn't really matter who wins or loses. It's just about a game and having fun and getting fresh air. 99.9% of sports is just people who will never be professionals and just want to have a good time. Probably 99.999% of sports. There's nothing to protect sports from. Sports is just a game. Ultimately, it doesn't matter who wins or loses. It's just about the game. And let me be clear, if we want to ban people from playing sports, how unlucky is it that Charles Barkley was born around the same time as Michael Jordan? Charles Barkley was born around the same time as Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan's greatness prevented Charles Barkley from winning a few NBA championships, and Charles Barkley's doing fine. Or if we want to talk about banning people playing sports, right now in the NBA, there's a 7'4" Frenchman who can dunk without jumping and can dribble and shoot from outside like a guard. I think that's way more threatening to the NBA than a trans person playing sports. So if we're going to ban trans people, let's also ban Victor Wembanyama from the NBA. Or at least trade him to the Golden State Warriors, my team. What I'm trying to say is I wish I could always work in places where everybody agreed with me and everybody thought the way I thought. That's not always the case. One of the reasons I wanted to work at Pushkin and wanted to work with Pushkin is actually not even because of Malcom Gladwell. I mean, I've read many of the books and I was a fan of many of the books when I read the books, but it's because of a man named Justin Richmond. Justin Richmond works at Pushkin, and you may know Justin because he's often hosts one of the podcasts at Pushkin, On the Record. I've known Justin since he was in college. Some of you know Justin, and you don't know you know Justin because he became a character on the Denzel Washington is the Greatest Actor of All Time podcast when he was known as Black Judgment. Some people's brains just went, poof. Many of you have no idea what I'm talking about. But I've known Justin since he was in college, and he was basically an engineer on the Denzel Washington podcast. And so Justin reached out to me and said, hey, would you be interested in doing a podcast here? And I was like, I want to do a podcast with Justin. And I thought about all these things about the fact that me and Malcom Gladwell disagree on trans women in sports. And I hope we can have that conversation someday. But I want to be clear. This podcast is my project. I feel lucky that I'm able to do it. It's 100% owned by me, and I 100% can say whatever I want to say about whatever I want to say, as long as it doesn't get anybody sued. But so I hope me and Malcom Gladwell will have that conversation, but don't think me being here in any way dampens my enthusiasm for the trans community or anybody else in the LGBTQ rainbow. So keep hope alive, and I'll keep out here too. Today's guest is Kristen Kish. Kristen Kish is the host of Top Chef. She became the host when Padma Lakshmi did not continue to host the show. So we talk about that, how it was, what it was like to be a competitor on Top Chef and then to take over for a legend like Padma, who's also a friend of mine. It's a very wide-ranging conversation. At one point, Kristen took it over. We got into some Kevin Hart roast talk sort of accidentally. It was interesting. Kristen hadn't seen the roast, but the clip of Tony Hinchcliffe just came across her feed, and she was sort of like, what is this? And because she knew I was a stand-up, she's like, can you explain this to me? The clip of Tony Hinchcliffe condemning George Floyd to hell. And so we got into a whole conversation about how stand-up comedy works, and she ended up sort of hosting the podcast at that point, and it was a great conversation. We also talked about how good she is at her job, because I was a guest on Top Chef, a guest judge. And then before she left, I realized I wanted to talk to her about being a transracial adoptee. So about a month ago in the New York Times, David French, a white conservative op-ed writer from Tennessee, talked about how he didn't really understand that racism was as bad as it was until his adopted Ethiopian daughter was crying at school one day when he picked her up, and she was sad because she had been called the N-word by some people in a truck. And that's when he realized, oh, racism might be bad the way black people have told me it's bad, and now I understand it because it's affecting my daughter. And I know a lot of transracial adoptees who cringe and really get blood-boiling mad when they hear white parents of transracial adoptees talk about not understanding their child's identity. I know a lot of transracial adoptees who think that white people should not be allowed to adopt outside of their race. So I talked to Kristen about her identity as a transracial adoptee. She's Korean, she was adopted by white people, and how she grew up and what her thoughts about it were. And she had a lot of interesting things to say. And I was really grateful that she was that vulnerable and was able to talk about it on the podcast. So it's a really great interview. I'm really excited about it. Check it out. Kristen Kish, Who's With Me.